Hello, Faris, and very welcome to Leadership Inside Out. I'm looking forward to today's session. I know you've got a fascinating story to tell, but I'd love it if you could just introduce yourself and let us know a little bit more about you.
Thanks, Guy. Great to be with you and great to be with all the listeners, viewers, and anyone who happens to stumble across this. There's a bit of pressure. You said I've got a fascinating story to tell. I better tell a fascinating story now. I'll just make stuff up now. What's a bit about me? My name's Faris Aranki. I'm the CEO and founder of a little consulting firm called Shigeto Consulting. And Shigeto is the Japanese word for a sharpening stone. So
Ah,
we see ourselves as human sharpening stones. Not that we sharpen knives on ourselves, but we sharpen other humans. We get to them to be slightly sharper. We get teams to work slightly better, and the impact it has is immense. I've been doing this. I started the company about 5 years ago, and that was built off a career experience that was very varied. Took me from being a school teacher initially. I used to teach the hallowed subjects of maths and economics, which people listening are either cringing or applauding. I then moved on into a career in the oil and gas world via short stints as a journalist and a policeman. And then moved into strategy consulting, where I went from analyst to partner before deciding to jack it all in, which many people thought was bonkers, and I still do some days think it's crazy. But these last 5 years have been immense, and I wouldn't change any of that.
wow. And I think, I mean, genuinely, I think you underplay. You've been, as I say, starting from a teacher, but you've also worked for some of the best known consultancy firms out there. So it's not as though you've not had that opportunity to go through the more traditional corporate route,
Yeah.
and you've still thrown it in for the insecurity, the flexibility, and the joy and pain that we know is running our own business. So,
I think you've summarized it nicely. Yeah.
so do you mind? We're taking us back.
Yeah.
Teaching economics and maths.
Yes. Well,
What was the driver for that? I mean, you went to Durham, was it? I think.
yeah, I studied at Durham and I studied maths and economics. So I did a joint honours degree, which in itself was a mission because it turns out it's quite hard to balance two subjects that are quite different. I'd always been very mathematical before that, and then getting introduced to the world of economics, which is all about theory and debate. I
Mm.
was trying to apply a mathematical mind, like there must be a perfect answer. Like, come on, why have we not worked out what is the way to drive and grow an economy? And that proved to be the case, not just for me, in the fact that 40 of us started the course in the year that I started it, and by the end of year one, only four of us were still going, doing the dual.
Wow.
But anyway, so I did go to Durham, and I graduated in the dot-com burst.
Mhm.
Going into university, I suspected I'd aim to go and get a corporate job, one of these graduate jobs, and sort of start on the career ladder there. But there weren't a lot. So I reevaluated my position. Thought, well, look, I could either compete with everyone for the limited number of jobs, or I could do something a bit different. And I'd always wanted to go and live and work in Latin America, Guy. And so, this was just one of many strategic problems I've solved in my life. I didn't realize I was solving. I wrote down on a piece of paper, how can I get there without just backpacking? Um, and I realized I had a professor at university who had been a headmaster of multiple schools in Latin
Wow.
America. He was married to a Colombian woman and he'd taught in different places. And I had a good relationship with him. So I said, could you help me? So he wrote a very nice letter and he sent it to all his headmaster chums. And he said, I've got this young man who would love to come and work at your school. And I got a reply. A school were willing to take a punt on me, even though I had no teaching qualification. And they gave me a 2 month trial. They said, okay, well, yeah, he can come for 2 months. He can help as a classroom assistant or do something. And within about a month, they just upgraded that to a 2 year contract. And then 6 years later, I was still teaching in different schools, different places. So,
Wow. Wow. So, and I mean, again, just re-stepping, thinking your perspective.
yeah.
What was that thought process? What did that thought process look like? Was it very pragmatic, or were there emotional aspects to it?
No, they were emotional. It was a combination of pragmatism and emotion. As I sort of hinted at, I'm a very analytical person. So even with the emotional side, which besets us all, and that's why I kind of do the business I do today, which is blending emotions and thinking. I can step back and say, well, what should I be doing? What are the different solutions here? What are the different options? And it just seemed the right thing to do. I don't know, I know people around me were like, hang on a minute, because the first school I went to, Guy, that little school, was the British School of El Salvador, which many of
Wow.
the listeners probably you might not piece it together. This is the early 2000s. El Salvador was the most dangerous country in the world. That's probably why the
Absolutely.
headmaster was willing to offer me, because he didn't have any other teachers.
Wow.
Just to put it in context, we would have about 5 kidnappings a year from the school of the kids. The murder rate was so high. I look back now and go, that wasn't very logical, Faris. Like, you went and lived there 2.5 years, and we could fill this podcast with hours of stories just from that one country, things that I saw, experienced.
Wow.
But you know what? What an experience! What a place to start off. Having come from a nice closeted, sort of good family and university experience. Yeah, okay, a bit of drinking, but yeah, world away. And I love those sort of things. I love sort of going to a counterpoint to shake up my own thinking, learn new stuff.
Right.
And it's no coincidence that the other places that I taught were Nepal, a little mountain village school,
Wow.
and a university in Palestine, and then a school in Tottenham. So you find the common theme between those 4 guys.
Wow. Well, and I mean, I having myself moved from New Zealand to the
Yeah.
UK in my early 20s. How do you find the cultural barrier? At least, in my case, I vaguely spoke the same language, but Spanish to, well,
Yeah.
Nepalese.
Nepalese, Arabic. Fortunately, I grew up an Arabic speaker, so we'll eliminate that one. Spanish, I loved and I found I picked up through actually. The best way to learn a language, anyone out there, is go date someone who doesn't speak your language. You'll pick it up very quickly, particularly if you like the person. But that cultural counterpoint was quite a shock.
Right.
And anyone who says, oh, it's all plain sailing, no, it's really difficult. All right, okay. There's language, right? You learn to get really good at only understanding 50% of conversations, and do you know what? You learn a lot more about body language and things. It's amazing. I can tell you a lot of stories, but most of us could actually communicate with another human being, even if we didn't say the same words.
Yeah.
And you learn a lot about that, being able to, how do you get your message across? A lot of the stuff I teach leaders nowadays, simplification, right? The more words you use, the more confusing it is. So dumb it down to the most basic. What do you want? Body language is so important. Always smile. Always show your good intention. So that was really, but equally, some really powerful lessons about, do not take your set of assumptions as for granted, right? There is, even on the most basic stuff, people out there who think completely different to you. And if you only work in with your point of view of the world, you're not going to get very far.
No. Good messages.
Mm.
So from teaching
Yes.
to police, is that the next?
So once I decided to leave teaching, it became a bit of a quest to switch careers, and that proved not to be easy. It's not as easy. I naively thought it would be easy, so I just went on the internet, found 30 jobs. I thought, oh, I can do that. I can do that. That sounds good. Yeah. Sent my CV. None of them accepted me, and none of them even replied, apart from one. And it was this letter that I still have, an email, which said, it's from an HR director, and he said, look, I don't know why you applied for this job. You're a school teacher. You should stay being a school teacher, is my advice. Good luck to you. And I was like, well, God, hang on a minute. This is A, going to be harder than I thought. And B, how frustrating that people just apply labels to you and don't look beyond the CV. So that taught me some key lessons when I made my next 30 applications, which, and I changed my label. I stopped I actually took the word teacher off my CV. Right?
Wow.
I reframed it as expert communicator, able to get across any message to an audience for over 8 hours a day. Think on their feet and and suddenly all the applications come in, they are successful. But during this transition, so that took a while because I ended up going down getting a graduate job route, and they only start once a year. So once I knew I'd leaving teaching, I had a bit of time. So
Okay.
me being me, I thought, well, let's try other stuff, right? I don't know what I don't know. So I managed to get an unpaid internship at the BBC. So I was a reporter, not a reporter, a researcher on a news program, just because I thought I might want to be a journalist. And if that had taken off, I would have not accepted the graduate job. But that didn't pay anything. So I also took a temp job that happened to just be in a police station. And so I ended up working with police. Again, showed I was savvy. So within the space of 3 months, had two different job changes, moving up the ladder. And they were like, well, just stay here. You're a natural fit. But for me, it was just a learning curve. The police was less serious than the journalism, but what an amazing experience to see uphand a big public institution. Again, I took so much from it.
Yeah, and I can imagine you came across a lot of very different types of people, different types of backgrounds, humbling possibly.
Very, very much so. Yes, different careers attract different people.
Yeah, wonderful. So into the graduate role.
Yes, into the graduate role, although I was considerably older than all the other graduates. It's a bit like, when you've got a 4-year-old who's grown very quickly and you can see it. Yes, I joined an oil and gas firm on their graduate scheme, largely not because I was fascinated by oil and gas, even though oil and gas is fascinating, it turns out. It was because they had the best scheme. They were open to negotiation, because I looked at this scheme and said, well, it's 3 years. I was like, I'm sure I can do all those things in 3 years. So I said to them, if I can prove to you at any point on 3 years, and it wasn't just me, that you have all the skills that you look for at the end of 3 years, can I come off this program and take a role within the firm? They said yes. So lo and behold, thanks to all my teaching skills, I was only actually on that scheme for 9 months before I accepted a role in their corporate strategy team. So that's where my first hook into strategy got, and I realized I loved this sort of macro view of the company, helping them make decisions on should they buy A, B, should they enter country X or country Y. Really fascinating questions to have the privilege to be to help answer.
So at this point in your career, is this you've moved around a bit, you've quite varied roles, and then there's the theme seems to be coming through of change and learning. And when you went into the strategic role, was that what sort of mindset? Was that a more of the same, or is this
It is more the same, Guy. I unashamedly love that variety and that learning and new experiences. And what I loved about strategy, and probably why I then maxed it when I went to strategy consulting, is give me loads of problems, right? So on the graduate scheme, they put you in a certain part of the business, which was great. You have to learn about the different components, but then you were very much just in that part of the business. So at one point I was in the call centers. So you learn all about call center and teams and operations. At one part, my next rotation was in a marketing team. So learn all about how do you brand, how do you market. The thing about why I took the role in the strategy team is you got to oversee every department. You were helping the strategies of everything, and that really appealed to me. It's like, let's solve problems from a variety of places. And actually, that's one of the great things about consulting. When I did the maths sometime a few years ago of how many different companies and how many different projects I've done, and it's well over 200. And what other career allows you that access to see into so many different types of companies, so many different challenges across a supply chain or a value chain, sorry. And for some reason, that's just what I love. I'm the person, and that flows into everything. If I'm on holiday, I can't sit still. I can't just say, here's a beach. Let's sit here for 7. I'll be like, oh, there's a mountain over there. Let's go climb that. There's a museum that claims you can only do it in 2 days. I'm going to do it in 1. I'm part idiot, but part perpetually curious.
Wonderful. And it strikes me, a couple of hundred, I've had a bit of a consulting background, but nothing of that magnitude. but that creates a sense of credibility, a sense of confidence that you can work with any potential client, and bring something that is valuable to them.
Yeah. Yes, and I think you need that perspective. It's fascinating how many people, how can I politely say this about consulting firms? People who don't necessarily know everything advising you on stuff as though they do.
Yes.
I will never say to anyone that I know the answer. I'll say, look, I've got a bunch of hypotheses that I've accrued from working with a variety of companies. I will hand those to you. We'll add them to your hypotheses. We'll pick the best ones, but we'll still treat them as hypotheses. Right? We're going to go and test quickly if they work or not. But yeah, other people will walk into a room confidently with an attitude of, I know what you need to do. I'm always very nervous when I meet those kind of people.
As am I.
Yeah.
So oil and gas into the consultancy firm?
Into consulting, yeah. I got approached by a headhunter. Obviously, he was just keen to make a profit on me, but he said, look, you'd be perfect for strategy consulting. And he just arranged an interview for me. So that was my first consulting firm, which was EY. I was in their strategy team. And that was a brilliant place to learn all about consulting, which is a bit of a culture shock for anyone thinking of going into it from industry. But once you learn it and get immersed, and then, as you intonated, I sort of use that as a platform again. I was just telling some junior consultants last week, I was doing a career workshop with them. And I said, look, I've only ever applied for one job. It was that graduate job, as in a formal application or going to a website. Everything else came like from the professor. A nice letter here, a headhunter there. All my other consulting jobs were former consulting or colleagues who moved company and took me with them, right? And that's something I advise everyone: find good people, attach to them, or show them that they that you're a bonus or offer some skills. That great things will happen for you. I in 12 years was 4 different consulting firms, thanks to people giving me a phone call at some point, going, I think you could help us here. And it culminated with making partner in a firm, and it turns out making partner is not the be all and end all of everything, despite what people will tell you.
It brings a lot of stress with it.
It does bring a lot of stress, and there's always another ladder. There is, it's you think you've reached the top, but hey, lo and behold, there's another Everest behind you. So that's why people will tell you it's a marathon, not a sprint. Like everything in life, there's always another ladder.
Wow. And reflecting back on that consulting part of your career.
Yeah. I loved it. Again, no other place will you get access to doing 200 different projects. You're surrounded by immensely talented people. You learn more in a couple of months than you do in a couple of years. But there's a trade-off. It is intense. You give up your life. You give up physically. You are never there. Because you're traveling. I was certainly worked across Europe, the Middle East. It demands a lot of you because it is kind of like a survival of the fittest. And you're surrounded by insecure overachievers. So you don't even need a boss. You kind of each push each other to go, no, for jostling and for learning and for. As with anything in life, go into open-eyed, wide-eyed, see the trade-offs, get what you want out of it. But I did enjoy it, and that's why I still loosely do a variation of it, but not quite what I used to do.
And then you made the big leap to being self-employed.
I did indeed.
What can I ask? What drove you?
Yeah. I kind of touched upon it. I came to the realization I was no longer enjoying what I was doing. I'd morphed into something else to tick a box to make partner.
Yeah.
And that was no longer, I wasn't enjoying it on a day-to-day basis, the challenge, solving problems like I used to. I'd become a people manager. Now I do enjoy interacting, but that's, that wasn't what I wanted to focus my career on. So once I realized that, and combined with the second realization I had, that was I was really good at a side of strategy that wasn't a common skill set, which is in the worlds that I operated in, we were a very high IQ world. You know, we say, give us your problem, we will work out academically what the answer to your problem is. Here you go, here's your answer back. And then lo and behold, clients receive a nice strategy that they paid millions of pounds for. They don't do anything with it. Right? Not because it's not the right answer, but because of all the emotional side of things. Like they don't understand it, or they don't buy into it, or there's politics in the boardroom, or they're just doing too many other things, and they're like look at it and go, oh my god, that just sounds like a lot of work. And unless you sort all those things out, then you could literally hand over the blueprint to anything and it would just sit on a hard drive or sit in a drawer. And I was very good at reading the emotion in a room and having the honest conversation, getting people. And that's when the penny dropped. That's what my business should be. Right? Don't just come at these things from an IQ point of view, an academic point of view. Come from the people, the emotions, and then you'll get the best out of teams, the best out of strategies. So that was the combination of those two things is why I started my own company.
And that was just before COVID?
It was indeed, Guy, yeah.
Oh, great timing then.
Yeah. And it makes me laugh. Again, I am a massive I geek around biases. And COVID and the timing and people's responses, massive case of hindsight bias. Everyone would say to me, well, that was stupid, wasn't it? Starting a firm 6 months before COVID. And I was like, hang on, if I knew COVID was coming, I would have, bet big on the stock market. Forget even starting. So, they tend to forget that bit that you're not you didn't know. But anyway, yes, it was a very, very, well, basically it flattened the business in the first year. We had no work. I say we, it was just me at that time. So, so it was but everyone was challenged during that time. I mean, it was a global pandemic. So you're not in a unique situation. But yeah, I just had basically a little bit of work. I thought I'd finding my feet. It all disappeared overnight. Then I had 7 months of no work. But then fortunately kept my nerve, applied the lessons I'd learned from year one, and came out the traps for version 2 of the business. And that, took it from there, grew the business quite quickly in the early years.
Did you learn stuff about yourself during those 7 months?
Oh, yeah, 100%. Like I said, you have a false confidence when you're in a high performance environment. When you strip that away and you don't have anything behind you like a brand or a team, you learn a lot about yourself. You learn about your mood swings and the impact they have on trying. You learn about your self-motivation. How do I keep going when there's, there's 100 doors have been closed on your, and 100 no's. You learn about who your real friends are, your real supporters are. And they're not often the ones you think. It's amazing how people will flood to you when, you have a title. And I've got a friend who started his own business and he was a 2-time CEO. And I met him a year later and he said, it's really hard, Faris. People I used to ring who would respond within 5 seconds now ignore me because I don't have the title anymore and they don't give a damn. I don't affect their career. And I think that's the reality, right?
Absolutely.
So all these things you learn, as well as technical things. How good you are at selling, how good you are. Before you and I came on this call, how good. You talked about your laptop breaking down. How good you are at fixing laptops. How good you are. Whole bunch of stuff that you never even predict that way. And nobody sits at home going, do you know what? I'm going to start a company to have the things that have happened to me in the first 5 years, to have a trademark dispute and learn all about the technicalities of trademarks and go to battle with a big company. No, but these are the things that actually happen when you run a small business.
Yeah, they are indeed.
Yeah.
Great. And so where are you now? What's today look like for you?
So we have the pleasure of, from a company point of view, we just end of last year celebrated 5 years of the business. So not long past 5 years, which, I took a step back, celebrated, because the majority of companies do not make year 5. That's the reality. So, and because my brain works like this, and we've already covered it, like new challenges, I thought, okay, that was block 1 of the business, year 5. Let's be honest, it was a lifestyle business that just did good. And now what's my next 5-year plan? So I sat with the team, we planned it. It is about growing it intentionally, making it more of a business. So we've got exciting plans to grow it out, from where it is today to a bigger firm with a brand, and investing in an office, and to just being a bit more grown up with the firm. And I think that will be a nice thing to achieve within 5 years. It will be a new challenge for me because it's quite different running a business than you being in the business and you just feed other people.
Absolutely.
So that's where we are today. I'm excited by it. So it's given us sort of new focus as we head to 2025. And touch wood, started okay, but you ask me in 5 years if how that's gone.
Wonderful. Have you? And I know you're not particularly old, but
Yeah.
as you look back on your career so far, any? I mean, I can see themes, but from your perspective, themes that come through.
Oh yeah, loads. I've had to draw the themes, and that's one of the good things about being your own boss. You look back on your life for lessons, to put things together. And actually, that's something I've always done for one reason or another, because nobody else will thread together your own life.
No.
Yeah, and so you need to process it. It's one of the reasons I write every week. Is to process what's happened that week, look for the common theme. So definitely, there's these themes of curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
And as I say all of these, you could flip them and say a negative thing about, he gets bored too easily.
Or he's nosy.
He's nosy. He's a flight risk. Here's the thing: any quality can be turned around, right?
Absolutely.
So, or presented in a different way. So, be careful of labels as good or bad. So, yeah, there's certainly that sort of thing. There's certainly a stubbornness. Like, I won't accept a defeat. I won't be defeated by something. So often, when I started something, going back much like that maths and economics degree, it turns out I hated the math side of it, but I was stubborn. So I was like, nope, if there's only 4 of us going to graduate, I'm going to be one of those 4 doing this. So, there's this theme of, linked to the curiosity, you don't know what you don't know. So go find it out, and don't be arrogant. Never walk into a room assuming you know. You're the guru here. So I love that curiosity, but also that flexing. My career's taught me to flex, pause. Do I get it right all the time? Of course not. But that has been my mantra. That's a lot of what underpins what we do today and what we teach senior executives. So there's a lot of themes. But and hopefully some more to come.
And if you look back, what advice would you give your just graduated self?
I'd say, the advice is love what you ended up doing, keep doing it. Temper it out by not getting so frustrated along the way. I've given you the highlights and I've told the story. There were periods during that I was super frustrated. I felt I wasn't accelerating quick enough. I felt like, look at this person next to me. They're going, and that particularly happens in a high performance environment, consulting and professor. It doesn't matter at the end of the day, right? So what? The person next to you gets a title or an opportunity, as long as you're still doing your stuff. They might have for 18 months, but then they stall a bit because, when you look it back across the length of a career, it all kind of evens out. I know and again, as long as you're doing good stuff. So I would sit my younger self down and say, have a bit more patience. Don't worry about these things. Don't get distracted, or because a lot of emotional energy goes into that at periods of your life.
It does. And in terms of overcoming issues, any sort of insight or tools?
100. I've had just as many failures as anyone. Some have felt horrific at the time. And the 2 tools I've learned to develop that I've either developed myself or unashamedly stolen from other people. One is called the Genie.
Yep.
And one is a failure anniversary. I don't know if you've heard of either of those 2.
I've heard of the second, but no. Tell me a little bit about both of them.
So the genie is, as it sounds, it's like Aladdin. Imagine you have found a genie in a lamp, except in my world, the genie has one wish, and only one wish. And he makes it makes it very clear to you. Once you use the wish, I'm gone from your life forever. So I've always imagined I've got this lamp and I've got this genie. But I'm such a like FOMO kind of person. Anytime something bad happens to me, what I do is I go right. Is this the thing we're going to use the genie on? Is this the big thing that we use it and we can never use it again? And my brain will go, well, it's not that bad. It's not bad enough for me to use this one shot deal. And I'm like, well, it can't be that bad then, right? If you're not willing, so that always pulls you back from the brink. The genie is such a brilliant mind trick to. So in 45 years, I've never used the genie, even though at times I've got down to pen and paper, going, I think this is the time. And then the other one is a failure anniversary. When something bad happens to you, I put an anniversary in my diary for a year later, 6 months later, to celebrate that day. And the more of these you have in your diary, and I have a special color code, they just remind you, because things that seemed big a year ago, you're like, oh, that thing. Huh, all right. Really powerful, way to reframe and look back.
Yeah, and it's something I suggest to clients all the time. But yes, that sort of concept of and what have I learned from that failure? What what have I changed? What's my mindset now looking like? And it's failure is your most powerful learning mechanism, most powerful tool. So
yeah. It needs a total rebrand, basically. But
wonderful, thanks, Ferris. Any last thoughts before we close up for today?
Yeah, I mean, leadership is difficult. Leadership is messy. We're all leading in one sense or another. So don't be afraid to lead, even if it's just yourself, and try new things. Right? The style of leadership that might be perfect for you might be just one you haven't tried yet. So, yeah, I think that's an important thing to remember.
And possibly don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Yes, exactly. Right? Just keep your genie by your side.
Oh, well, Faris, it's been, as I suspected, a wonderful session with you. You have an incredible wealth of experience, and some of your stories, well, we're sure we could carry on for a long time. But thank you so much for your wisdom. Thank you for your insight, and all the very, very best for the next 5 years.
Thank you very much, Guy. Thank you for inviting me on this fabulous podcast, and I look forward to seeing many more great leaders be interviewed by your good self.
Thank you.